What is education, and why is education important? Is it important? After all, what's the real purpose of getting educated about anything? We so frequently take education and the process for learning in general totally for granted. Not only that, but the ways in which we think. How we've gone about structuring our own consciousness itself has largely remained unchanged for a long, long time. So how do we literally change our minds? Can we reconfigure our own ways of thinking? And if so, how? Join Dr. Joseph Atman, the founder of one of the world's most revolutionary educational centers, Middletree, and award-winning broadcaster Tammy Trujillo for Educate Everyone and explore the mysteries of our own consciousness and the education we implement in order for it to be what it is.
And on this episode of Educate Everyone, we continue our conversation with Frank Torres, the Director of Strategic Initiatives at Middletree. Here's Dr. Joe and Frank.
The theme that I'm kind of picking up is family's influence, just on education in general.
Earlier I said, you got to get in there, right? And that could mean a lot of different things. And I think it could be different. There's room for that to be different for every family, right? What that means. And I think taking ownership of that as the family unit, or even, as a guardian or a household or what have you, I think is essential. And so to give a few examples that I grew up with, I grew up with a lot of educators, my aunts and uncles, cousins. A lot of times you say something, and I think some people can sympathize here, is you say something and it turns into kind of like a whole Socratic seminar where everybody's asking you questions. Everybody's listening intently and coming up with more questions, and they're interested in you. And maybe not everybody has that, but that was a big thing in my family, is just being interested in what the younger people were doing. It's something that's free. It's something that is enjoyable, even if the kid is complaining at the time. Because I know sometimes I just wanted to mention that I was glad that it was summer vacation and then that those finals were tough to get through. Well, now we're talking about that for 45 minutes. Maybe I didn't always want that to happen, but understanding that other people were interested in what I was doing, especially with regards to education, was big for me in terms of setting up the expectations of what I should be doing and then what I could do and what being academic was. So being academic isn't just wearing a blazer and having patches on your sleeves, having glasses and being in a classroom. It means asking questions, being curious, and keeping a conversation going. Keeping a conversation going that's not an argument. That's really, really important to impress upon a child. There have been times in my life where that's really all I had, right? That's really all I could do. Going into the working life without too many skills, what I had was my ability to hold a conversation, ask questions, answer questions. And these are things that, and I might get some pushback here, but from some listeners, but those are things that school can't always teach you. And a lot of people like to say, well, school doesn't teach you this or that, but there are some things that you have to learn outside of school so you understand that it's real. The asking of the questions and answering the questions, keeping the conversation going, and having that be a part of your social life and knowing that you're a part of that is a really big part of children just growing up to participate in society. Participating in society isn't, I hate to harp on this, but going into a corner and being on your tablet or your iPad or your smartphone. You lose a lot of opportunities that way, being so insular and not being able to have a conversation. And I'm not saying you go out and you have to be extroverted, but like you were talking about with the interviews that you were doing, Joe, a lot of people wanted those positions. We got the people who could show their attitude, who could hold the conversation, those positions required speaking ability and that attitude towards academics in general. And so being able to have that culture within a family is a really big advantage. Now, every family is different, so everybody's going to do it in a different way. Everybody's going to have their own things. I have a friend who, in his family, they're really big on athletics, and not just one sport. Like my family, we were big on baseball, but as many sports as possible. And of course, a lot of people in that family, they're firefighters or park rangers, etc. So the way they communicate with each other is different, but it leads to similar positive outcomes. So all that is to say, there's a million different things that you could do. The dialogue is, of course, my favorite. That's what I grew up with. But there's a lot of things that a family could do to raise good kids or good adults who were kids once.
So much of it does start at home, and anything that parents can do. I think we could almost sum this up, the whole conversation up, but anything the parents can do is of help, as long as it's in a positive intention and just doing your best, I think, as a parent, because that's all that you can do. I think most parents want their kids to be happy and healthy. And I think that's kind of the end of the list, right? And successful, I guess, maybe, in their own way. But when you first have a child, I imagine, you don't say, all I want for him is to be the valedictorian. You want your kids to be happy and healthy. And you want them to be able to have as much success as possible. But we're all trying to do this difficult task of raising up the next generation. And I think anything the parents can do, again, with a positive intention is going to be beneficial towards that aim. I think, again, you could sum this conversation up by saying, try your best, do your best, whatever that looks like and is for you. When you're doing okay, we're all in this together as educators, and that home life, we're all kind of sharing this journey of raising up students, raising up kids to be the best versions of themselves. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to what I was talking about earlier about reading to your children at home, that within a family or within some kind of household, reading out loud to each other, maybe not the most popular thing in the world, but my wife and I have done that with each other. And it really brought us closer together, in my opinion, just reading out loud to each other. If you can do that with the whole family, when we read to our child, we read to our child together. Not only does it ideally have the academic effect and the cognitive benefits, but it brings us closer together as a family. And it's something we can enjoy together. And it's a really good time. The idea is that when our son goes to school and he's reading or he's doing his homework, doing his classwork, that he can feel that his mom and dad are there with him in a lot of ways. And so not to get too sappy, but that's how I always felt.
No, I love that. That's great. Anything that family units can do together is obviously good and important. But like you said, people are so busy nowadays. That's harder and harder to do. So I think you just have to make the time to do it and make sure that that's just something that happens and that is essential to the growth, development, not only of your student, but of the whole family makeup itself. And I think that just given the way that society is today with technology and the fast-paced kind of world that we live in, that doesn't happen as much. So I think you're dead on, and I think that that's entirely right-minded to attempt to do all that.
I mean, this is kind of maybe a little bit of a departure here, but one thing I did want to talk about, what I've seen lately is that, in myself, I didn't go this path, but what I've seen lately is that going the community college route, community college to a 4-year, can be a really great path for students. Earlier I was talking about how, as parents sometimes, or educators, sometimes we want to be perfect. And then there's that pressure for a lot of parents with high school students to get them to go to the best possible college right away, get them to get that prestige. I think sometimes misses the forest through the trees, so to speak. I was very fortunate to do really well in high school, and I was able to get a scholarship. And I went to Arizona State University. I was in the honors college, which is all great and fine, right? But I have I won't say exactly how they're connected to me because they're a little bit embarrassed about this, but I have somebody who I'm connected to through family who, I don't recall exactly what their GPA was in high school, but it might not actually make it onto the scale. It was so low. But they were able to eventually graduate. They went to a community college where they did really well. They got it together. They did really well. From there, they were able to transfer to UCLA, graduated from UCLA, and then got their master's from UCLA. Now, has a gainful career in education. I did really well in high school, and I got the scholarship, but I didn't get to go to UCLA. And so I think sometimes we want to have the status. We want our children to give us that status when ultimately the goal is something like that person that I mentioned earlier. The goal is to have your child eventually figure it out, live as a self-sufficient, successful adult at some point in their life. And hey, if they can graduate from UCLA while doing it, that's fantastic as well. And, I've heard recently a lot of kids put down community college and put down their friends that are going to community colleges. And I do want to say that I think now more than ever, it is a great opportunity and it's a great privilege to have that available to us, especially in California, where we have some of the best community colleges that you're going to find in the country. I did want to put that out there.
I appreciate that, because I think that old way of looking at things as far as the prestigious college is concerned is still there. It's still prevalent, but that's not everybody's path. And like you said, we have in California one of, if not the absolute best community college systems on the planet. It's so readily accessible for folk, and they work very closely with the Cal States and the UCs, the University of California's, which are also their state schools in their own right. And it's just a great system up and down. And it's something that people should take advantage of just in general. And education is still an education regardless of where you get it from. And I think a community college is a great option for so many people, especially those who, if you're just graduating high school and you don't know exactly what you want to do. And especially if you have to pay, most people do, most people aren't independently wealthy. Go to a community college, figure out, is college for me? Would I rather be doing something else with my life at this stage or just in general? I think community college is a great place to figure that out without having to pay a giant tuition bill. I wouldn't say it's an underutilized resource. And I think this is true, but it's becoming more and more of a first option, or at least an option that's as highly considered as a traditional four-year university. And I think rightfully so, because there's some great people working within community colleges. And I think the stigma was that some sort of second-rate education. That's not the case here in the modern era of higher ed. Community colleges, I think by and large, are on par with a lot of those more reputable institutions now, those that we think of as being more reputable. But the educational experience, I think that a lot of people will get at a community college is equal and maybe even greater because of that individual's own needs than that at a four-year university.
Absolutely. And, and I'm not getting paid to say this, but community colleges, a lot of them now do offer some bachelor's degrees in some cases, especially in the state of California. There's like emergency management services, there's forestry. They have different degrees to work with aviation mechanics or different technical skills that I was really impressed by. I have a nephew who's just starting community college, and, I was looking into it for him. And, like it happens with me often, is I ended up going down the rabbit hole and learning a lot more about community college than I anticipated. Not 100% for my nephew's benefit at that point, but I think there's a lot there, and there's a lot to be proud of in general and what we have available in higher education through our community colleges, UCs, CSUs in the state of California. It used to be that I had several aunts that worked at Cal State Fullerton, and they would always kind of talk it up, and I'd be like, okay, right? You know how you are as a teenager, but going back and looking at what they have available and what they've been able to do, it's pretty amazing. Cal State Fullerton, for example, regularly competes with some of the best colleges in the nation on several fronts. Cal State Fullerton has one of the best film schools in the country. They're always 1 and 2 with USC. And a lot of people go Fullerton College, Cal State Fullerton, and then whatever they're doing. And that, in a lot of ways, is a world-class education. And I shouldn't say in a lot of ways. It is a world-class education. And I think it's pretty impressive. Sometimes you see what people you work with, where they went to school and what they're able to do, what they know how to do. It's pretty interesting.
And I can tell you, as somebody who has some degrees from some more reputable organizations or universities, you can get a genius, a so-called genius, teaching your class, and that person just might not resonate with you. So I think the more you're able to modify and take some control and agency over your own education, the better off you're going to be. Community colleges just give you a great option to do exactly that. thanks for being here. Thanks for being the stalwart fixture that you have been at Middle Tree for as long as you have been.
I appreciate it. Again, I'm passionate about education. I'm passionate about what's called the great global conversation. And I hope my work continues that for the benefit of the people in our community. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on this podcast and hope it ends up one of the better ones. And if not one of the better ones, I appreciate it anyway.
Well, I appreciate that. I think we're doing an interesting thing here is just talking about, and I'm not sure that the conversation is being had enough, talking about what's going on in education just in general and how can we fix it? And what are some alternatives and options and some ways that we can move not only the conversation, but the actual process and practice of education further and better it. And I think every conversation that we've had here on Educate Everyone does that, even if in small ways. And just kind of like what we were talking about with the family structure, if you can just provide an opportunity to have those conversations, because we're all a part of the educational process. Every one of us is. Even if you're not involved in education, you were at some point, almost certainly, or you're adding to it via your tax dollars or whatever the case might be. We all have a say in it. And this conversation, this podcast, I hope, helps to, again, give some more voices to the conversation and just hopefully better the process while doing so. Thanks for this talk, and thanks for all your years and years now of dedication to what we're doing generally at Middle Tree's mission.
And now the Middle Tree Minute.
This is Kristen Hernandez, Middle Tree's executive assistant. When your student shows you their writing, instead of editing it for them, ask them to add one more sentence. Just one. This small ask helps them expand their ideas without becoming overwhelmed. It encourages detail, depth, and confidence, and it turns writing into something that grows naturally. Over time, just one more sentence becomes a habit that strengthens writing fluency with very little stress. And that's the Middle Tree Minute.
And now a quick look into Dr. Atman's book, A Philosophical War. Joe, for the last couple of episodes, we've been talking about how we're always on this mission for meaning and filling voids and problem solving, and how our brains are always in that kind of a mode. Why is that?
The reason I think we need to kind of explore this topic in this prolific kind of expose here is because, again, it's something that's right there in front of us all the time. And yet, because we're so busy solving problems, we don't ask ourselves, why are we so busy solving problems? Why do we feel like we have to be so busy solving problems? Why do we always feel like there has to be an issue or there has to be something that we've got to figure out? And so how can we operate, still solve problems, but operate on a level and a plane to where we don't see the problem itself as a problem, if that makes sense? Just kind of what we do here. And that whole kind of journey of our lives of what it is to be a human being is one of exploration. It is one that is something of this kind of quest and, like you said, mission for meaning and a mission to discover and through that discovery grow. But we're in this continual mode of questioning our relationship to the world that we inhabit. So we're searching for these kind of answers, and we're hoping that somehow if we come to this sort of story and this narrative about our own lives, that will kind of put us in a better place, and it will sort of stave off these dreadful realities that we actually face every day. So we kind of tell ourselves stories about the way in which the world is, how we are not good enough, or that's just not me, or, that's just the way it is, or we give ourselves these ideas about things. And that is a really convenient way for us to navigate certain things. But what that does when we give ourselves these narratives and these stories, what that does actually is it limits our capacity to actually encounter and deal with reality itself. We sort of forget about this mission for meaning and just say, that's just what it is. That's just who I am. That's just how it is. And we don't take the time, effort, and energy to really discover not only the reality of the thing that we're observing and looking at, but who we are in relation to those observations and those maneuvers within this otherness of the world, this otherness of being, this thing that we encounter every day in our lives, which is this life itself and the people and the phenomena, all the things that happen within it. So when we tell ourselves stories about not only life, the things that happen within it, but ourselves, we're really limiting ourselves to actual and true discovery about how things really and truly are and about reality itself. So what we're going to try and unpack and explore is, how do we cut through all that? How do we get to that which is, to reality itself, to something that we can have a direct and actual experience with, unencumbered by these narratives, these stories, these ideas that we have about ourselves. So that's where we're moving all of this towards. And that's really something that we have to look at a great deal further in order to have a true, real, honest, and actual relationship, not only with the lives that we lead, but with ourselves.
Thank you for listening to Educate Everyone with Dr. Joseph Atman and Tammy Trujillo. Join us each week as we explore the inner workings of our own minds and the educational system which builds and supports it. Also, check out our website at middletree.org to see what opportunities Middletree's programs can offer you or your student. And join us on social media. If you have any questions you'd like Dr. Atman to answer, please leave them on a post or send us a message, and you may hear them answered on the next episode of Educate Everyone. Until then, thanks for tuning in.